Hey guys, welcome back to Hellstormwargaming and welcome to Coffee Time, our weekly Sunday show where I sit down and tell you about all the interesting things that have happened in 40k. Sometimes it's other stuff. But if it's not welcome back, then do consider subscribing so it is welcome back next time, because that'd be really cool. Now, a lot of weird things have been happening this week in Warhammer, outside of Warhammer. But what has happened in Warhammer 40,000 is that Games Workshop have released a gigantic FAQ on us on like Thursday, which brings a whole host of changes for pretty much every single army. If it isn't directly affecting their codex or their own rules, it's affecting the missions that we all play in 9th edition, and it's overall rebalanced the entire game. Now, Games Workshop normally do a update for Warhammer 40,000 in December. They normally put out a new tournament mission pack, and they normally put out all what they used to call a chapter approved, and they also update the points for every single army around this time of year, or at least last month. I feel like with the fact that not many people are playing games and during the pandemic, I think they've probably thought that was a bad idea. So rather than like charging people and making a book with the new points, to put these all out for free. So hats off to Games Workshop for like reading the room for once. But there's a whole bunch of changes in all of the FAQs, and no one's going to be able to remember all of them. So what I've done, I've taken the top 10 biggest changes, in my opinion, that either affect a particular army or affect most of the armies that you probably want to watch out for, that I think make the biggest impact on the game, or a really large impact on a particular army, because not every change does affect everybody all the time. So I'm going to be going through those today, but if I do miss anything, is anything that you think is bigger than what was made the top 10, then do let me know down in the comments down below. Leaving comments, leaving likes on videos really helps out the channel, so I appreciate if you can. But otherwise, let's go through the top 10 biggest changes. Number 10 is Tyranids, and Tyranids actually had a points reduction on a lot of interesting units, but I've pulled out two in particular because I think they're the most interesting. Is that Hive Guard have gone down from 40 points to 35 points a model, and the wings on Hive Tyrants have come down 15 points each. Now, Hive Tyrants and Hive Guard are probably the two most common units that you're going to see in a Tyranid army. I actually ran Tyranids in a battle report on Friday where I was using Hive Guard and Hive Tyrants as well. Now, Hive Guard have ignore line of sight guns, and they're a really clutch unit, and you usually run them in units of 6 because you want to shoot them twice. They're going to stand in an L-shaped building, shoot really strong weapons out of line of sight at 36 inches, and then shoot twice, have reroll ones to hit, and then you can also cast psychic powers on them so they get extra hits on 6s, etc. They're kind of like an auto take unit if you're going for that style of like some backline shooty, like backline objective grabbers. Now, they're not needed in every single Tyranid list, but in my opinion, they're like, you won't leave home without them. And the fact that this unit is so strong and in my opinion an auto take, and they've come down in points, is really good. I mean, you essentially get a free one in every unit now, so you're only paying for 5 rather than 6. Now, makes the list of having 18 Hive Guard now they count as having 15 Hive Guard in that particular list really good. Also, Hive Tyrants have got a bit of a buff, and not only have they gone down in points by 15 because of wings, because you pretty much don't leave home without wings with these guys. With the changes to bring it down and assassinate that we're actually going to go over in the next few, this unit is actually a lot better on the tabletop, but it's also cheap, which is always good. Number 9 Number 9 is Adeptus Sororitas, or Sitters of Battles, have also had some points changes. So two changes that are really interesting is that Repentia have gone up a point and Retributors have gone up 2 points each. Now, Sisters of Battle or Adeptus Sororitas are like one of those armies that everyone's aware of and everyone knows they're really strong, but people who don't play them don't really know why. But these are like two of the like most clutch units. The units that kind of like you're gonna spam if you play this army, if you want to play it competitively. And whilst they've only gone up like 1 point and 2 points each, which means the units have gone up, I think, if I remember correctly, the Repentia have only got like 10 points a unit, and Retributors only gone up 10 points a unit, because usually they're taking like 10 Repentia or like 5 Retributors. They've not gone up a lot, but because you're taking so many of these units, it's going to like add up across the army, where you're not going to be able to get as many support characters in, so you might have to drop something, or you might have to take the Repentia down from the maximum size. It doesn't sound like a lot of difference, but when you're using like stratagems on these units, or when you're using like miracle dice to get like auto charges, it means that unit isn't hitting quite as hard, because there's not as many bodies, the stratagem is not affecting as many models at one time, etc. And it all kind of adds up, and again, you're losing minor characters here and there, which you think, oh, I've lost that, but it's also one less unit that they've got on the board because of the fact that their list have gone up like 20 or 30 points overall. Number 8 is Space Marine point changes. So Space Marines obviously are a little bit of the boogeyman in the meta at the minute because they are really strong, but some of the most seen units have actually gone up in points, and one's gone up in points that probably shouldn't have, and then another one hasn't changed at all, which probably should have. So the biggest boogeyman of the Space Marine Codex codex is the Eradicators, and they've gone from 40 to 45 points per model. Now, Eradicators are the big Gravis guys with the melter guns that shoot twice if they shoot the same target. And whilst this is a little bit of a nerf, I do think that this might be like a little bit maybe not quite enough. You're still going to see Eradicators on the tabletop, but again, like I just spoke about with the Sororitas update, it's kind of like overall, if you're taking a few of these units, you start losing quite a bit because you lose other bodies elsewhere. It's not just like an upgrade you can lose to account for like maybe 2 units of Eradicators. That's like a 30-point increase overall. So you might lose some unit sizes, might go down, or you might lose a minor character, which kind of it adds up over the army. Inceptors also went from 40 points to 45 points. In my opinion, I think they should have made the plasma guns 5 points extra, because the bolter inceptors are good, but they're not worth that points increase. You're just not going to see them even less. Now, plasma inceptors are kind of like one of the strongest units in the codex, because they are so tough and they've got such good shooting, 3 wounds, toughness 5. They've obviously got stratagems that the Eradicators can use because they're in Gravis armor. They can get like +1 save. A really, really, really strong unit. But again, the bolter version is probably not seen as much compared to the plasma one. So upping the base unit was a little bit of a bad move in my opinion. I would have just upped the plasma, but that's just me. But then also Outriders went up in points. They went up 5 points as well, from 45 to 50 points a model. I'm not really seeing why they'd make this change, because whilst Outriders seem scary and on paper, then they're okay on the tabletop. They're a strong unit, don't get me wrong, they're not exactly bad, but like they weren't like dominating the meta. It's not like you see Outriders in every list like you would see Eradicators and Inceptors. This could be to kind of future proof for when the Dark Angel supplement comes out, and if Raven Wings are really good and makes Outriders really good because they're Raven Wing, then fair enough. Kind of like nerfing them now seems a bit weird. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm not really sure on that one. Something I didn't actually mention whilst I was recording this was that the fact that the Blade Guard didn't get touched. Like, Blade Guard are really strong. They're like 35 points a model. I'm surprised they didn't also go up 5 points, because that would have like made sense. But no, untouched. So buy Blade Guard when they come out. Who knows when that will be. Number 7 on my list of top 10 is also Space Marines. It's the Space Marines Combat Revival Stratagem. So this stratagem is essentially for the Apothecary to revive a model in a unit that's not starting strength. So you can take like an Intercessor that's died in a unit and revive it. If you take the Chief Apothecary upgrade, which is only 15 points to upgrade a Apothecary to a Chief Apothecary, they can do this without spending a CP, so they can essentially get models back up every turn for free, and then they can also heal units that are around them. Now, this was like in contention for quite a while, because ATVs are the new quad bike type unit from Space Marines that came with the Indomitus release. They sit in a weird spot because of their keywords, because they're not vehicles, but they're counted as bikers. And because the Apothecary can revive one infantry or biker unit, what you theoretically saw was that the 15-point upgrade for an Apothecary, which is, if you take the basic one, is like 50 points. He can revive an ATV every 10 because they come in units, and an ATV is 85 points each. So if he revives one, he's made more than his points back, and he can do this every turn for free. Now, this kind of like nerf is great. Theory behind this list of running maximum ATVs and then loads of Apothecaries on bikes, or Apothecaries with jump packs if you're playing Blood Angels, for example. It didn't really happen, just lots of people spoke about it and knew it was bad, so you never really saw it. You don't really see people talking about it anymore, because it's kind of like it's accepted that it's pretty bad and it's going to get nerfed. So they've kind of got that in writing now. So whilst it is a harsh change, like that guy who went out and bought 9 ATVs, no one feels sorry for you. Number 6 is actually related to the G-Team 2020 mission pack, which is the chapter approved, which is all the missions that are used for tournament play or match play, or pretty much the missions that everyone plays, whether that's in person or on TTS at the minute. Now, the secondary Abhor the Witch, which has been changed for the amount of points you actually score. So this used to be, if you kill a psychic character, you get 5 victory points, and if you kill a normal enemy psychic unit, you get 3 victory points. So this has been changed so the characters give you 3 points and units give you 2. Now, this is like great for every army that uses a psyker, but doesn't make much difference on some armies. For example, Grey Knights and Thousand Sons still suffer from this secondary, because the only prerequisite is that the army that chooses it can't have a psyker in their army themselves. But Grey Knights and Thousand Sons, every single unit pretty much is a psyker, especially the infantry. It's pretty much only the vehicles that aren't psykers. And then in Thousand Sons, you've got monsters, which are psykers as well. Those type of armies bleed these secondaries, and they just pretty much can't get around it right now, which is a bit of a shame. But armies like Tyranids and Craftworld Eldar, which were pretty much, if you're playing against these armies, you'd take this along with something like Assassinate or Bring It Down. Bring It Down's also changed, but you'd stack these together because you kill, for example, a Hive Tyrant, you'd score 5 points for Abhor the Witch, and then you'd score 3 points for Assassinate, or you'd score 3 points to Bring It Down, making each like high tyrant or similar unit worth 8 victory points out of 100, which is massive. And the same for Craftworld Eldar, you can take Assassinate on those as well, and Abhor the Witch, and then you score 8 points for them. So there's kind of like no granularity. It's like you can kill a high tyrant with 12 wounds with an Invuln and get 8 points, or you can kill a 3 wound Warlock at 40 points with a 4+ Invuln and get 8 points. This change, like when you've got an army that's more balanced, like for example Eldar with like 1 or 2, maybe 3 Psykers in their army, along with a load of other stuff, and you've got Tyranids with like three Psykers maybe. These guys aren't gonna like auto give up Abhor the Witch anymore. Again, we've kind of already said that Grey Knights and Thousand Suns will already always give this up because they've just got so many Psykers. Units that kind of like take 1 or 2 Psykers aren't going to suffer. And what you might see is people start taking 1 or 2 Psykers in their list, hoping to dodge Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, because outside of those armies, this secondary is no longer an auto take against certain armies. So it's kind of like a buff for some armies, but then for Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, they're kind of just still stuck, basically. Now, number 5, halfway down. This is talking about the GT mission pack as well. This is talking about the primary objective, take and hold / domination. So the way this works is that from turn 2, every player scores at the end of each of their command phase for holding an objective, or holding 2, or holding more, or holding 3 if you're playing domination, for example. And what usually happens is that at the end of player 1's turn 5, whoever went first, the game can usually be called because it's like that player can stop the opponent who's about to have their last and final game turn. They can stop them scoring any primary objectives just by moving in a certain way, and they can call the game before the other person's actually had a full game. It's usually player 1 who will have their 5 turns, and then player 2 will usually end up having 4. Usually with going first, you have just that massive advantage, and this kind of starts to negate that in quite an interesting way. So what it does, it allows the person who's gone second in their final turn, rather than scoring at the end of their command phase, will actually score the points at the end of their turn, but only in that last turn. So what it means is that the person who went first can't just block objectives and move certain units off that they're holding. Now the other person will have a chance to actually retaliate with movement, land on objectives and score some points that way, and kind of have like the very last scoring point, which I think is going to be great for kind of like mitigating the first turn problem. I actually made a whole video just about the issues with first turn a couple of months ago, and how there's a bit of disparity with going first and always winning. I think the average is like 60% of people who go first win the game. And I feel like this change of the primary can actually help mitigate that, or at least give that person who did go second their full game to try and score points, rather than getting to the end of player 1's turn 5 and being like, well, you can't win, you're going to score this, so that we may as well call it there. It also means that player 1's turn 5, whoever went first, if they can't just like suicide run units off objectives, because I find myself on that last turn, if I've gone first, I can be like, well, I've held all the objectives now, so I'm just going to try and throw as much as I can to stop my opponent scoring any points. Now I can't do that. I've got to hold objectives, and I've got to try and kill them as well, because the opponent will have that final turn to move on to objectives and then score hold 1, hold 2 and hold more. And if I've jumped off them all, they only need to hold 2 to get that 15 points. So I think this is a really good change. Number 4, another big change is roll first, go first. So normally you'd roll off to deploy armies, and you take it in turns, setting a unit up one at a time. And then what you do is you'd roll off again, and then whoever wins decides who goes first or second. Now, the previous change that we've just spoken about with scoring at the end of that last turn if you go second is actually really powerful, and I think you can actually build lists to abuse that. So I feel like this rolling first and having to go first, or rolling highest to actually have to go first, a kind of way to mitigate that, because what you could do is you could plan to always go second, so you roll off, you win, and then you go second because you want to abuse scoring at the end of the game. So I think this kind of mitigates that in a really good way. And again, the second player has gained such a large advantage from being able to score those points at the end of their turn on that last battle round. This kind of stops the planning for it. Usually when you deploy, you can kind of decide if you want to go first or second at that point and kind of deploy for it, because usually if you want to go second, your opponent probably usually wants to go first, because your list that wants to go second is usually built for that. So it doesn't matter who wins, usually you'll get your second turn. Also, what you can do is if you see your opponent is deploying really defensively, like they're going to go second, what you can do is if you do win that roll off, you can force your opponent to go first, which really screws their plan, makes them have to do stuff that they don't want to do, like stretch out where they don't want to do, or move to an objective where they didn't want to be yet, or like bring out some big guns when they can't see anything because you've deployed defensively as well. Now it's all on the dice. You don't have that luxury. It's like you roll off. If you win, you're going first, and it's tough luck, which is good and bad. If you're kind of planning to go first and you lose that roll, it's going to hit harder, I think, and it's going to be more infuriating because there's no chance of your opponent going, actually, I want you to go first. Now it's just, you lost, you've lost, you're going second. And this really increases some stratagems, such as, I think it's called tactical redeploy from Ultramarines, so they can like redeploy some units, as well as Phantasm, which is the Eldar version. Any other stratagems that allow you to move before the game or allow you to redeploy before the game starts, they're gonna like, their effectiveness has gone up a lot because now you can't plan to go first, it's just a random roll. Number 3 is again talking about the core missions, or the GT 2020 mission pack, and it's about bring it down. This is a huge change. So rather than it being 2 points for anything less than 10 wounds and 3 points for anything over, now it's 1 for less than 10, 2 for more than 10 but up to 19, and then 3 for anything with 20 or more. As you're probably expecting me to say, this is a huge change, and this really benefits armies like Guard, Tyranids, Admech and Drakari, where these are kind of like always taking a lot of vehicles, especially Imperial Guard. They're taking like 6 Leman Russes, which is just auto bring it down. Drakari are bringing a load of transports, which are like worth 2 points each. And then Tyranids are obviously bringing big psychers, but they're also bringing big monsters, which can be stacked on Bring It Down, or Abhor the Witch, or Assassinate, for example. Now this like makes a really, really big difference, because those armies aren't going to be like auto giving up Bring It Down. Now a more typical army, for example, a Leman Russ army, might only give up 10 points and Bring It Down rather than the maximum 15. And Drakari aren't probably going to bleed as many secondaries, because they already bleed quite a lot, especially against like Grind Them Down, etc. The typical builds for these sort of armies that you'll see won't automatically give up the maximum 15 anymore. They might only give up 10, which means your opponent, when you're choosing those secondaries against these armies, it's just going to be a lot more difficult to work with. Anytime that you can build a list which nullifies your opponent's choices or drastically reduces the effectiveness of the secondary choices, you're already in the driving seat of that game, in my opinion. For example, Deploy Scramblers is a great secondary. It's really easy to get, but it's only worth 10 points, whereas usually we go for something else that can go for 15. If you can force your opponent to Bring It Down, now it's only worth like 10 or 12 points rather than max 15. You've essentially gained 3 points because they can't get that. They can't max that out anymore, which is really good. Number 2, we've got reinforcements and charging. So this is like a really, really interesting one because it's more of a clarification rather than an FAQ change, in my opinion. And this is to do with like units arriving from Deep Strike 9 inches away, but then actually having a shorter charge. And the great thing is this has been clarified, but in previous editions, this is not how it worked. In 8th edition, especially, towards the end of it, if you deep strike 9 inches away, it doesn't matter if you technically can get closer than that with a charge roll. You'd have to roll 9. But this is something that they've gone and made a rule totally against and completely changed it all up, where they've said that because of the way that engagement range works with like 5 inches on top of buildings and stuff, so you have to be within an inch horizontally but 5 inches vertically to get in engagement range to actually start fighting. Now they've said that if you land at an angle, because of trigonometry, you can go across and then up ever so slightly rather than making that full 9. You can actually start having shorter charges. If the opponent's on a 9-inch tall building and you deep strike on the floor, or vice versa, and you can get like a 3-inch charge and get into engagement range by getting within 5 inches, then you can have like a 4-inch charge from deep strike, which is really strong. And it's something you've got to watch out for, because this is something that will catch you out if you don't plan for it. Especially if you like put all your stuff on top of the tall building or keep your stuff all at the bottom underneath a tall building. It's something you kind of have to watch out for when you're playing games, and just being aware of where people can deep strike. It's quite interesting that they've clarified it, and you're going to get some really short charges on certain terrain boards or certain setups. It won't come up a lot, but when it does come up, it'll be very frustrating. So something to watch out for. The final one, the biggest change I think, is again GT 2020 mission pack. It's a secondary, and it's while we stand, we fight. Now, this secondary, for some armies, pretty much auto take it. For example, Imperial Knights, because if they lose all their big knights, they've usually lost the game anyway. They might look at taking it. Other armies that might take it is kind of like the hero hammer type lists, or things with like really expensive characters, such as Tau Commanders or like Custodes jet bikes, etc. Because it used to be the 3 most expensive models in your army. So what you'd either do, you take stuff that's really hard to kill, such as your Custodes shield captains on Dawn Eagle jet bikes, Or you take stuff that can hide behind a lot, such as your tower commanders with the drones, etc. And you kind of hide them away, and if they do survive, you get 5 points for each one. But now what they've done is they've changed it to the most expensive units you have rather than models. So whilst this completely nerfs Custodian Jet Bike jumping and hiding, or Tower Commanders hiding, it actually, in my opinion, opens up the secondary to more armies. For example, you can now look at, say, if you're playing Imperial Guard, you could take this and put it on the Bullgrins. If you want to take a big unit of 9 Bullgrins, they're really hard to shift. They're tough as 5 with 3 wounds. Invulnerable saves, you can get the invulnerable save to like a 3+ with Psychic Barrier, and then making them -1 to hit. So you can make them really hard to kill. Or if you're playing Demons, you can take a max unit of 9 Beasts of Nurgle, which are toughness 5 with 4 wounds with an invuln and a disgusting resilient currently. So you can just take a big blob unit, which is like a bully unit or something that just sits and holds an objective and doesn't do anything, and just be like, whilst we stand, we fight on there, and then on 2 other units. Whilst yes, it does make it harder for like Tau to use it, or for like example the Hero Hammer that I mentioned, I think it just opens up the secondary to more armies rather than being limited to quite a few. Me personally, I hardly ever use While We Stand We Fight, but now it's got a lot more interesting. And I think that's a really big change, because it means more armies are going to be able to use that objective compared to what they can do now. And that's it. There's my top 10. I've got 2 honourable mentions. In the Space Marine FAQ, there's a mention of the Codex Supplement Combat Doctrine bonuses, which is essentially when you move stuff from one doctrine to another with abilities such as Sanguinary Priest Blood Chalice. I actually did a whole video about this, where I said it kind of doesn't work properly as it's written. You can go watch that if you like, but now it's definitely out of date because they've basically spelled it out here. It was kind of already pointed out in the Ultramarines FAQ, because they talked about one of the Warlord traits that allows you to put something into the tactical doctrine, but then did they count as standing still because they're an Ultramarine? And they said yes, so that was kind of already clarified, but now it's nice to have this in the Codex FAQ rather than like a specific supplement, which is kind of like, this is right for this one, but it's kind of like we're just guessing on the rest of them. But now it's said if you count as being in a doctrine, you get all the benefits of that doctrine, including Savage Fury, etc. The other honourable mention as well is Drakari Reavers points. Now Reavers have dropped from 20 points to 10, which are the Reaver jet bikes, and this is a 2 model that moves like 16 inches and it's 10 points a model. I think this is actually a typo. We've also seen Hellions go up in points, which are much weaker, and they're higher in points. I think they're like 20 points or something like that. So I think there might have been a mistake where the Hellions and Reaver points have been swapped around. Been updated in the Games Workshop app, but I still think it's wrong. Take that with a pinch of salt. Don't go out and buy 36 Reavers until we've had another maybe update in 2 weeks or something. But I just thought I'd bring that up, that I think that's wrong. But what do you think? Do you think it's wrong? Do you think we should have 10-point Reaver jet bikes? Are you sure? Are you positive? And that's it. There's the top 10 with 2 honourable mentions. Biggest changes in the 2021 40k FAQ that came out the other day. I hope this helped. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it like maybe when you're playing a game one day, again, probably on TTS these days, that you kind of like remember some of these things, and maybe hopefully it doesn't catch you out. Or if you do, maybe you can use some of these to your advantage. I don't know. Let me know. Do you agree with the list? I've gone from what I think is kind of important to the most important. Do you agree with the order, or do you think I've missed something? Then let me know down in the comments. Again, it'd be really, really helpful. This has been Coffee Time. If you're new here and you enjoyed the video, then consider liking it, and also subscribe, please, because I want to hit, I don't know, an arbitrary number by an arbitrary time. But thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Mikey. I finished my coffee. I hope you enjoyed yours, and hopefully I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye now.